In today's session, we're going to talk about a couple of things: how to handle the instrument, basics on tuning and setup, and some tips about that, and then body position. How does your body relate to the instrument? What should a good position be for you? And above all, what are some good things you can do so you don't hurt yourself? This is a big instrument, and it's really important that these basics of handling it, how do you move it around, what are some good tips for doing that, what's the setup of the strings and how important that is for comfort in playing the instrument. And finally, your body is always in relation to this big double bass. What are some important things you should think about in terms of your body in relation to the instrument? So just a couple of things about handling the instrument. I'm not going to go through the basics of taking it in and out of the case, but if you're going to be picking up the bass or putting it down, you want to grab it under the top of the upper bout like this and basically do the lifting that way, or you want to grab the bass by the F hole and have a good handle right here at the base of the neck, and basically you want to move the instrument like this and put it down. Similarly, when you're picking it up, make sure that the weight is with your legs and that you're not lifting with your back. Really important tip. And you can grab the instrument by the F hole and basically pick it up that way. So I've seen lots of people handle their instrument in different ways. That's a pretty safe way to manage it. I've got edge protectors on my bass for these old Ks. It's helpful to have something like that. People typically put the instrument down in the same orientation. I'm lefty, so I always put the bass down on this edge, and that way you protect the edge of the instrument, especially as sometimes they're deteriorating just from all the years and years of handling. Tuning the instrument. So you've got 4 strings on the bass. They correspond to the strings 3 through 6 on a guitar. Basically, your lowest string is a low E, your high string is a G, and the strings are separated, well, depending on how you're looking at it, but they're basically a fourth apart. So you have your E string, and then you have your A string, your D string, and your G string. And it's important that those strings are kept in tune. So having a tuner is one easy way to make sure that you're going to both remember what the strings should be tuned in, and then have that extra help in tuning the instrument. I leave my tuner up on the headstock. I used to leave it down on the bridge, and then I realized that anything you put on your bridge is going to act as a mute. And a mute means that the toning of the instrument will be impacted and it will be quieter. So I recommend leaving your tuner up on the headstock, and then you can also see it well. I did check the tuning on this bass, but it's a warm day, so here's my E string. That's pretty much in tune. My A string, my D string, and then my G string. Now, an important thing to note is, what are the height of your strings? I tend to like to play with a fairly low action. Sometimes I like to play with a higher action, and depending on what strings you have on your instrument, that will also impact both the tension on the neck and the height of the strings. I can't emphasize enough, if you're a new player or even if you've been playing for some time, is that you check your setup. That is, your strings their height to the fingerboard, your bridge, just all of the factors that influence the tension on the neck and the health of the instrument, as well as your physical health. What's going to be comfortable for your hand, what kind of playing are you doing. It's very important that you have somebody who is trained to look at the setup of your instrument, a competent luthier or a repair guy in your, or woman in your area, and have them check out your setup and discuss with them what kind of music you're going to be playing. Are you going to be bowing the instrument or not? All of those factors, and how strong your hands are, how big your hands are, how much playing you're doing, will all influence where your action ends up being set. So the instrument will have its own needs as far as how the action needs to be set, and then you have your own personal needs that all need to be factored in and considered. So when you acquire your bass, or you're borrowing a bass, I highly recommend you invest in taking that instrument in to a qualified bass luthier or repair person, and ask them to look over the instrument and make sure that those factors, all of those things are lined up to give you the best possible playing experience. Okay, so we've talked about how do you move the instrument around. You've got 4 strings. Your lowest string, the E string, sometimes that's referred to as the 4th string. I'll probably in these videos just be talking about them by name. Your A string, your D string, and your G string. And you want to make sure anytime you're going to practice or you're going to be playing with people that you're going to make sure your instrument is in tune. If you're traveling with your instrument, I don't think normally it's necessary to detune your instrument unless you're taking it on an airplane. So basically you can keep it in tune, and weather conditions will impact how far out in and out of tune it will be. But you always want to be checking that, as well as when you're playing with other people, you want to make sure that you're checking your tuning regularly, because you want to be in tune. It's very important. Okay, and we talked a little bit about setup by virtue of talking about tuning and string height. Very important that the instrument is going to be comfortable, and that if you're going to be bowing or you're going to be slapping, or depending on what technique you're going for, that will impact the height of the strings, the setup, but it always should be comfortable for you. Okay, so let's talk about body position and how do you hold the instrument. There's some really good YouTube videos out there. I encourage you to take a look. I've been looking just to see what people have to say about it. I have my own personal take on it, but I encourage you to get as much information as you can and then come up with a position for holding the instrument which feels natural, which doesn't put your shoulders in strain, doesn't put your neck in strain. You want to always go for comfort and what feels good and what's going to allow you to get around the fingerboard and play. The way I talk about that is, if I have my instrument here, I'm not playing. I have a very intimate relationship with it. I'm not playing with it all the way out here, and I've seen people that do play like this. Mike Barb, a great bass, just fantastic bass player, I think he tends to play that way, and it works for him, but I don't recommend it, and I think, it's not, it looks to me, it's like he taught himself, he arrived at that position, it worked for him, and again, he's a fabulous role model in the bluegrass world. But to me, it's like you want the instrument to be right there, right next to you. When you're at ease, you can lean on it. You've got a good control over it, but your body is essentially feeling relaxed in relation to the instrument. So If you're not feeling that, you don't got what you need in terms of your body with relation to the instrument. Another thing to be aware of is I think it's important not to lock one leg over the other and be just moving or pivoting where your one particular leg is always stationary. You will run into problems that way over time, so it's really good to be shifting the weight of your body when you're standing and playing the upright bass, and you're thinking about that your whole body is somewhat at motion, in that you're not getting rigid, you're not locking yourself in, you're not allowing yourself some freedom of movement when you're not playing the instrument, and then even when you are playing the instrument, dancing with the bass is a good thing, and having that comfortable, intimate relationship with its body to your body is something that I think about and I think is important. So you can see how I've been standing with this bass, and what I basically am doing is I've got this side of the right, I'll call it the right side of the upper bout, which is this portion of the instrument, and your lower bout, that's corner is leaning into what might be called your groin area, or the area right below your belt and your upper hip. It's essentially, the instrument is leaning into you, and you have the ability to actually balance that, no hands. And it takes a while to get that feeling. Everybody's anatomy is different, and the bass's anatomies are different. A 3/4 size bass still has a lot of variation. So, but the basic position, again, I'm not really holding the instrument, but the instrument is leaning into my body in a very comfortable, relaxed manner, which then allows me to position my left hand and my right hand in a very comfortable position. So again, you've got your upper bout and this edge, which interestingly enough has a little bit of a worn area, and that is going to be basically leaning into you. But it doesn't always stay like this. Depending on which string you're on, in this case when it's completely leaning into me, I'm going to be on my upper strings right here. When I'm playing on my E string and my A string, the two lower strings, at that point I'm actually wanting to slightly rotate this instrument out from me, so my arm is always kind of in relatively the same position, but the instrument itself is rotating. And the way that I accomplish that is I'm using my left knee, and I'm using my knee to turn, either by exerting pressure on the back of the instrument to turn the bass slightly away from me, or releasing that and allowing the bass, by the fact that it's leaning into me, to turn in, and then again I have a much easier way to get to my G string. So a couple of other things that are important. Notice the height of the bass. That's critical to your comfort level and to your ease of playing and your ability to move around the neck depending on how much you want to. Classical technique, I haven't studied it, but I've been taught a few things about that. Basically, your arm is going to be in this, left arm will be in this type of orientation. Your four fingers are lining up on the fingerboard, although upright bass players are using 1, 2, and 4, and they're not fingering with 3 as you would on an electric bass. And then your thumb is going to be behind your second finger, or your middle finger, and your arm and your hand are going to shift. That's very important. I've seen a lot of different left-hand techniques by folks that have taught themselves. I initially taught myself. But that type of adoption of classical, somewhat of the classical technique, and actually shifting your arm, your whole arm moves, and you're in, depending on whether you want to talk about position, first position, second position, isn't so important, except that there is somewhat of a box notion that we'll be talking about in another video, where you're kind of working that box, and then if you need to come down here, you're going to be working that box, and your whole arm is going to shift. Okay, so that's that concept of how are your fingers lining up, how is your arm in relation to the instrument and its angle and leaning into you. So you've got nice, good, comfortable access here without feeling any kind of discomfort or pain. For your right hand position then, again, the instrument's leaning into me. The edge of the upper bout and the back edge is kind of leaning against this part of where my hip kind of comes into my groin. It's balanced, I'm at ease. My right hand then, for pits playing, which is what we'll be covering in these sessions, my hand just very naturally comes where it needs to come in order to then pick or play pits. So this is my comfortable position. My body is relaxed. And in the next videos, we'll be talking about what are we going to be playing, and then how do all these things come into play. Just to summarize then, I talked about the basic handling of your big double bass, the importance of setup and consulting with somebody that can help advise you based on the kind of music you're going to be playing, what's proper strings, string setup, bridge setup, so that the instrument is comfortable and it's going to perform for you the way that it needs to, and that also the intonation of the instrument will be set up properly, so then when you tune your strings, the instrument will play in tune, and then you'll be able to play with other people doing the job that you need to do. Thanks for joining me, and we'll see you soon.